Welcome to episode 23. I got Weslye Saunders here next to me. You're going to meet this man in just a second. Forged by Fire. Let me tell you what it's all about. There's a lot of podcasts out there that provide great business content, great inspirational content. What I want to do is something a little bit different. I wanted to talk about people's stories that just right after they made it, that fall back down and what you go through, what you feel like, what that fire is. And a lot of people don't make it out of that fire, and some people are forged by it. So they make it, they fall, and they come back up and they rise again, kind of like that phoenix rising from the ash. And that's the context of Forged by Fire. My backstory, from Michigan originally, very blue-collar, middle-class upbringing, got introduced to entrepreneurship at 18, made my first million at 25. Company I was a part of went out of business, fire. I bought the assets, created another company, ran it to 40 million a year in sales. 2009 hit, it crashed to 12 million in sales, fire. Pivoted, launched the Body by Body 90-day challenge, ran it to a couple billion in sales, and lost that too, fire. So the bottom line is business is all about entrepreneurship, and life is all about those peaks and those valleys. And this podcast is about how do we get out of those valleys to make another run. So episode 23, we have my brother Weslye here. This is the best dressed anyone's ever showed up. He came straight from Tulum.
Hey, I'm here.
Straight from Tulum, showed up, looking good, bro. Looking good.
Thank you, man. I appreciate
it.
I feel wonderful, man. This is the new conscious cloths, right? That's what everybody's rocking now.
Bohemian chic.
Hey, I like that.
Now, I can play in the hat game. I haven't gone to this yet. Kimono?
Yeah. Something like that. It's a mix between a kimono and a dashiki. So
dashiki.
Yeah.
All right.
Yes, sir.
Don't mix up those two words in one sentence.
I won't. Not at all, man. But thank you for having me, brother.
So happy you're here. So let's go through your backstory. Take your time with it. Kind of tell everyone really quickly who you are, and maybe even just a little bit of the Reader's Digest version, and then we're going to go deep into the story.
Okay. All right. It's always interesting when somebody asks you to give a synopsis of your life, right? Like, Where do you start? Where do you finish? But, my story started in Gary, Indiana, right? I'm a Midwest kid myself as well, so I know about those harsh winters, right? That's
Grand Rapids.
There you go.
90 minutes away.
Right up the road, man. And so, Lake Michigan ain't nothing to play with in the winter. But, so Gary, Indiana is where I was birthed. And
murder capital of the world for a little while?
For a little while, and it's a shame that we took pride in that aspect, right? Like, that was a badge of honor for a while, and that just gives you the thinking and dichotomy of what's going on there. But obviously, at that time, early 90s wasn't a great place to grow up if you could help it. So, I ended up moving to North Carolina with my father. He got a great job with the Raleigh News and Observer, a very prominent newspaper in the Raleigh-Durham area. And so I was between Indiana and Durham, North Carolina half the year. And so my parents had split custody of me, which was great. I tell people all the time, man, it was the best thing that ever happened to me, my parents not being married, because I was able to watch a couple people learn how to co-parent with one another and make me the priority, right? And so, grew up pretty cool.
Great parenting.
That's great parenting,
I have to co-parent. It's because we've been through so much growth and development, it's easy for us, but you can't imagine how many people, both sides of couples, ask how we do it. It's just like,
it's an art. It's definitely an art. It takes two to tango, and
your parents handled that well.
Handled it well, and I think them not being married, might have added to the success of that. So
well, if you take two people that are unhappy being married and you separate them and they can be happy, that should be at the benefit of the kids.
It should be, but that's not always how it happens, is it? So I'm being 34 now. I'm able to look back on it and see where the benefits happen, because I know a lot of friends whose life was crushed after their parents got divorced when they were 12 or 13, right? And so you go through those instances where I didn't have a lot of childhood trauma. I see a lot of guys, and men and women who are older in age still dealing with things they never recuperated from in childhood.
That's great to hear. So I'm very fortunate in the same regard. I can't relate or connect to people that speak of the scenarios and some of the tragedies that they've been through. It's just like it's mind-boggling to me. So it's like, shout out to both of our parents.
There you go. Hey, shout out, folks, mom, pops. Thank you. Yeah.
You raise good kids.
Right, yeah. Life is already hard enough without adding some stresses to some kids growing up, right?
Yeah. So you got to North Carolina. How old were you when you moved out there?
I was 6 years old, but they still had split custody. Yeah, I was pretty young, but I was still back and forth every year, so 6 and 6, and so we made it work. I'm flying at an early age, right?
So mom stayed in Gary.
Yeah, mom was still in Gary. Yeah, she was up there. So 7 years old, I'm flying out of O'Hare Airport, by myself sometimes. So I had to grow up quick, but it was great,
And this is where anyone could just walk to the gate.
That was it. Your mom would walk me to the gate, she'd be gone, and she'd be off somewhere. So that helped me grow up, and I was able to realize how things work at an early age. And of course, I was bigger than all the kids, right? So sports was a very prominent part of my life growing up, especially in North Carolina. Midwest is all about basketball. But we get down to North Carolina and the football thing is pretty prominent. And me being bigger than everybody, I wanted to play. But I ran into
water polo.
Water polo.
Horse jockey.
Horse jockey. Yeah. You know what time it is.
Horse jockey.
Come on, man. Yeah.
I love it.
So that was interesting. Starting that in NC and really getting my footing there. But I guess one of the traumas that I could talk about is being bigger than all the other kids because I wasn't able to play football at age 7 and 8 with kids my age because I was too big. And so they had a weight requirement. And so that forced me to play soccer. And I was in gymnastics for 5 years. Yeah. I played soccer and gymnastics for 5 years.
Why didn't they just move you up to like the older age bracket?
Well, it would have had to been 2 age brackets above, and my dad, I was 7 years old playing with some 10, 11 years old. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So, but that was usually the route a lot of big kids took. And so I'm, shout out to my father for taking a stand and saying, you know what, no, we're not going to go that route. Yeah. Let a kid be a kid. We'll get you, great and other stuff. Because my dad's an intellectual anyway. It was all about school. He really couldn't care less about sports. And so that was an aspect where I had to learn, okay, let's pivot. What else can I do? And so soccer and gymnastics really helped me grow.
I've seen you do some backflips.
There you go. Yeah, the backflip started.
You challenged my daughter when she was 8 to do her back handspring.
She beat me for the record, but hey, look, it was a good challenge.
Not at all. And if you've never seen a 6'6", 6'7",
6'7",
6'7", and 260,
265, yeah, right on.
6'7", 265 man do a backflip, just standing backflip. It's something to see. It's an art.
There you go, man. I've always prided myself on being able to do things that people wouldn't expect me to do, right. And that always felt good to me, which was, why I partook in those things at an early age and got into writing. My father's a prominent journalist in North Carolina, like I said. So, really understanding reading and why it's fundamental and literature and things of that nature really helped me understand sports better, helped me understand, schooling and things like that. So my upbringing was pretty cool, growing my stature.
You still write?
Oh, of course, all the time. Yeah.
What type of writing do you prefer?
Whatever comes to me. Sometimes, for a while it was poetry growing up. I thought that was a big thing, and then it was short stories and the fictional writing. But now, obviously, at 34, nonfiction is probably more interesting than anything. Okay. My autobiography is going to blow the books off. So. I'm looking forward to that, but yeah, I'm definitely stick with the writing, and it's meditative. I know you
read a lot of poetry. Yeah.
Do you? Okay, yeah, so you know how healing that can be. So, thank goodness I was into that. But growing up, it was cool. Graduated from Durham Riverside High School, and with a bunch of offers to play college football and basketball. A lot of people don't know I was better at basketball than football. Okay. So that was one of my big tough decisions.
You liked football better.
I wouldn't even say that. I think I like basketball better, man. But, I was thinking in the future. I was a lazy kid. I was pretty big and lazy. I was like, look, I'm probably going to have a better chance to make it to the NFL from a numbers standpoint. So I'll stick with the place where I probably, pose a better threat from a mismatch standpoint. So football was it. Coach Steve Spurrier came into town and, was talking some good stuff amongst all the coaches that we had coming in across the country. I was like, you know what? South Carolina, right up the road, not too far. Up and coming program, so that's what we stuck with, and that's where I got my collegiate career started.
Tell me what Spurrier's.
Oh, the old ball coach. All right now, Wes. Yeah. He was the old ball coach, man. He was a character. I tell you that for sure. But he was a straight shooter, and he was one of those guys where if you could play ball, he was going to put you on the field. And I respected that. So, that was one of the reasons why I committed to the University of South Carolina. And, he showed me all these big TV deals that USC had just signed and CBS, and we'll be playing on TV all through the year. I said, this is interesting. I want to play against the best to prove I'm the best. Yeah. And so that's what we did. And we went up the road, and it was a great decision for a while. I get there and my story continues on, and I have a great few years at USC and become the number one tight end in the country at one point, man. And it was, it was a pretty big deal to see all of my dreams right there within grasp, after all of that hard work and everything that we put in to get there. But of course, there comes the fire, right? Which is why we're here to talk about, man. Because all stories aren't just cotton candy and unicorns, right?
Well, I mean, in any story that's interesting, definitely is not.
There you go.
Any story of triumph, any story of success that's definitely not cotton candy and unicorns.
Yeah.
So, let's dive into that part of the story. So you have a great collegiate career.
Mm-hmm.
One of the top tight ends in the country. And what happens next? Who do you end up playing for next?
Well, before I get there, man, my senior year, I get suspended by the NCAA for accepting impermissible benefits from boosters and agents. Basically taking money and accepting funds for my likeness. The
law that's now in the trash can.
There you go.
Kind of like it's kind of like people that went to jail for cannabis, and now it's like the rich bankers own the large cannabis companies.
Precisely.
The law that now has changed so that athletes can get paid, so that people are not taking advantage of their name and likeness.
Yep.
Well, I actually didn't know this part of the story, so go deeper. Take it away.
Yeah, thank you, man. Yeah, well, that's kind of at that point, if you were anywhere related to sports, you knew that the better you were in collegiate sports, the better opportunity you had to get a couple handshakes to get a little extra money in your pocket because, they quote unquote pay us with an education, right? And so, you got all these college athletes who are making millions of dollars for the university, and we're going home with maybe $40 a weekend. That was our weekend money. It was a $40 stipend, which could be deducted if you miss a class or you miss a meal. You could walk home with $12, right? And for the whole weekend, that's gas, that's everything. And so the idea was that, okay, well, you get good at sports, you'll be able to get a couple handshakes and people will look out for you before you go to the next level. And that's what happened with me, man. I was enjoying myself. I'm in college, having a great time, and I'm getting better at football, and people are noticing. And that's what happened. And when people notice, the good and the bad notice. So, around 2010, I'm getting attention from agents and boosters and everybody who knows. Maybe I got a first round projection from Mel Kiper, and they, automatically that's a $15 million signing. Both people start looking at the numbers, right? So you got these financial advisors who know much more about business than I do, and they're preying on kids who are about to come out, right? I was preyed upon. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. But I should have had more knowledge about what I was getting into. I had some very prominent people in my corner who were trying to warn me about these things. My uncle, Butch Williams out of North Carolina, who was my agent as well, great guy who was able to warn me about things that were coming. And as a kid, you kind of sometimes ignore that stuff, man. It was somebody coming at you with a bag of cash, and they were flying me up to the Hamptons and, down to Miami and all of these places from Columbia, South Carolina, So obviously, it was a great time. It's hard to pass up. But it ended up coming back to bite me in the butt. When the NCAA came to town and had racked up all of this information on me from traveling. This was a time where Twitter had just gotten big, right? Twitter. So all of a sudden I'm posting pictures from spring break down in Miami at these luxurious hotels. And, people are like, wait, how's this guy paying for this? I only got $40 technically. How'd you get there? You got new chains and all of this. But, my peers, they love seeing it. So I was feeding into, oh, man, Wes, you're having a great time down there. We want to see more. And the more I was posting, the more they were watching. And eventually that summer before my senior year, the NCAA came knocking like the FBI with a big book of stuff and, came and got me off the field and told me I was under investigation with a couple of friends from University of North Carolina. And it was one of the biggest. It was actually up to date the largest NCAA investigation in history after Reggie Bush's situation comes in second. So, yeah, man,
what percentage of, we'll call it D1 football players at that time do you think were getting outside support of any sort?
Oh, man, I would say being generous, maybe 70%. Yeah.
Wow. I thought you were going to say 50.
No. It's definitely pretty high, whether it comes from, alumni who's in the city or, big, depending on how big your name is, you could be getting some, handshakes from anybody. But, obviously now that's the thing, that's the selling point for kids, right? How much money can I get in which situation, which is awesome for them.
So this connects the dot for me as to why you went undrafted.
Yes. There you go.
So you was it right before your senior year or was it, so you finished your junior year season?
Yeah.
You're ranked as one of the top tight ends in the country headed into senior year. I understand.
Yes.
What do you remember mentally? What transpired for you mentally when NCAA walked in?
It was panic. I remember not being prepared at all and feeling it was pretty much like I remember people asking, "Where's the body buried?" Because they came in and you would have thought I killed someone, man. It was pretty intense. They checked phone records, they checked bank statements. I didn't even know they could check all the stuff that they checked. And so, I was totally ill prepared. I should, Did
you sign a contract that allows them to do that when you're a football player?
I guess you being a part of the NCAA as a collegiate athlete, you administer to their rules.
There's probably somewhere in paperwork that you guys actually sign off.
There you go. It's 1,000 bylaws.
Yeah,
it's 1,000 of them. You spend your first couple of days.
I agree to be a D1 athlete, NCAA, and you're agreeing to all that shit.
Yes, exactly.
Wow.
Yeah, so you're under
I played
contract.
Junior college baseball. We don't have these problems.
Which poses the question why guys, we're fighting so much to be considered an employee, right? If we got to sign all these laws, like as if we're an employee, then we should be treated as such. But I just remember a lot of, I was depressed. It was a summer, man, and things went from literally you go from I'm about to, because also my body was in the best shape ever. I was going to kill it that year. I was ready. This was going to be my year. We had a great team coming up, and they suspended me right before the season started and dismissed me from the team. I was like the sacrificial lamb. I think the NCAA offered the school a proposition: get rid of Wes, and we'll make sure everything else goes away. Because I don't know if you know this, but when the NCAA comes to town for one player, they then have the right to investigate the rest of the athletics program. So now the baseball team and the equestrian, everybody's under fire, and their books are having to be opened because of this one guy. And
this is nuts.
Yeah, it was a lot of money involved, man. It was a big deal in the state, because obviously, that's unwarranted attention that you don't really.
This is such an interesting conversation for me, and I'm actually really glad that you surprised me with this part of the convo, because I've had exposure to celebrities, athletes, and just had a lot of behind the scenes conversations and conversations in public or whatever about lots of topics.
Yeah.
But I've never been in a one-on-one conversation with somebody that had to take on the NCAA. Besides Coach Dale Brown,
yeah.
But as a coach,
yeah.
and we ended up beating that, and there's a whole documentary on it. We actually funded the documentary.
Oh, wow.
But I've never with a player. So this is actually really interesting. Okay, so how long is the investigation period? Like, what was the scariest moments? What's some of the shit they put you through? Take me through kind of that NCAA investigation.
Oh, yeah. It started during the summer. They collected a bunch of evidence. I was actually in the Hamptons on a trip that was deemed illegal when we got the call that, hey, you're going to be investigated.
$40 can take you to the Hamptons.
Yeah, they're going to be investigating you on Tuesday. And so the irony is that I was up there with a financial advisor who was a former lawyer, and he had a bunch of these big wig lawyer friends who all lived in the Hamptons. So immediately we take a limo from Manhattan back to the Hamptons to a friend of his house, and we devise a plan on what we're going to say to the NCAA. It was like a scene out of a movie. We're on the beach, and you're like, don't talk to anybody, don't say anything until you get there. It got super intense immediately, right? And so I called a couple of my buddies who were also being investigated from North Carolina. They didn't know what to expect. Nobody kind of knew what to expect, and they came in with a full blitz. And from what I know now, when the NCAA comes knocking, they already got everything they need to know.
Of course.
And so they're just waiting on you to tell them,
it's
right?
Like the IRS.
Just like the IRS. They know everything, and they're waiting on you to give them what they want. And unfortunately, I panicked, and I wasn't truthful and forthcoming, which is a bylaw. And once you violate that bylaw, you can be reprimanded with suspension or loss of your, amateur status. And that's exactly what happened. They came, they blindsided me a couple of times. I actually had a right to have a lawyer there, but in my mind, I thought having a lawyer would make me look guilty. And so they came and surprised me got me off the field one day. They weren't supposed to come for 2 days later. They came 48 hours early. They caught me off guard. I didn't have time to get my lawyer down there, and I was totally ill-prepared, man. They had me in a room with the light. It was like out of a movie, man. You got the light shining. I'm sweating.
It's so stupid when you think contextually. When it's like, if you go macro perspective and you say, okay, all of this money that's put into this witch hunt of all these athletes back then, all of this time and energy and effort, because why? Because an organization is maximizing their talent and their brand, making billions of dollars to give them $40 in the weekend. And they're going to treat it like you said, like there's a murder. Like, who did you murder?
Yeah. It was
I just went to Miami.
And I'm 21 years old, so technically I'm a kid. Now when I look at it, you don't know what you don't know. And I was like, I'm a kid, man. There has to be some level of understanding if you're saying that I'm an amateur that,
we could go down, and I'm sure you'd be the first in line to go down this rabbit hole of it's just pure exploitation. It's just pure exploitation. Bottom line, right? It's like taking advantage of young athletes, maximizing their dollars, giving the talent as little as possible. Minimum wage for you're the best performers in the country, but we're going to pay you as minimum performers. It's fucking ridiculous. It's insane. Now, the other side of me, that's the very pragmatic side says, but hey, rules are rules, and we got to follow the rules, and the rules are the same for everybody. If the rules are the same for everybody, then we got to follow them. But that doesn't mean the rule's not absolutely idiotic. Mm-hmm. And it clearly was built for exploitation of young, talented athletes so that this organization could make billions of dollars and not have to pay them shit.
There you go. That's that sums it up. And a guy like me, I'm
meeting adjourned.
Hey, look. I'm an observer. I observe things. So even when I get to school and I see that the coaches have these deals with, local dealerships where they get free cars, and these dealerships will swap out the cars before 5,000 miles so they could sell them as new on the dealership lot. And so the coaches are riding in style. They got all these different, perks at country clubs, and they're living great. They're making some 6-7 figures. And here we are with this $42 every week, and I'm driving to campus with my 1988 Jeep Grand Wagoneer with the wood paneling chipping off the side, man. And it was, people made fun of my car, and I'm watching this, and I'm like, okay, well, all right, well, at least if I get myself to be a good athlete and prominent enough on the field, that I'll be able to partake in some of this glory. So that's what you're kind of working towards, and then you get there. And unfortunately, we got caught at the wrong time. They were on a witch hunt from the Reggie Bush case. A lot of people would say, you need to be harder on these athletes. How can you let this happen? You need to do more.
Mark my words, with how hard college is suffering right now of kids not wanting to go, and the fact that this conversation about paying athletes is being upended. The NCAA is on its
their days are numbered. Their days are numbered.
Days are numbered. Because if you're the fucking best actress in the world at 5 years old, you get paid as the best actress, as a child actress or child actor. If you're the best tennis player at 12, you're worth $50 million, right? If you're the best fill in the blank at anything else, you get paid as the best. But the fact that if you're the best athlete in the country, but you happen to sign your life away, the NCAA means they can take all the money. I'm so glad. That it's finally going to be coming to an end. And I know one person who's probably more glad than anyone is Coach Dale Brown. I know that
there
guy.
You go.
I know that guy well. So Thank you for sharing this part of the story, man.
Oh yeah, this is definitely part of the testimony. And once you put the dots together, most of my quote unquote fire came within a 3-year span, right?
Let's go to year 2.
2010, I'm suspended. Yeah, so that's where everything leads into, man. So
Let's go to year 2 of that fire. So you go undrafted. Who picks you up?
Well, before I go undrafted, I have to sit out. I'm still in school during the season. So now I'm right. So exactly, right. So I'm out of school, but I have to watch these guys play. My teammates do have the best season in school history. I don't know if that's the year that Cam Newton came out. South Carolina makes it to the SEC championship, right? And so I'm on camp. We beat Alabama. And it was just having to deal with that all season. But right before the season, my old teammate Kenny McKinley committed suicide. He played for the Denver Broncos. Very sorry for that. And me feeling sorry for myself, obviously, not being on the field. My livelihood has been taken away now. Felt deserted. And then we get the news about Kenny. That's like it's August, September, so beginning of the season. So I immediately look internally and realize, okay, well, the situation is not as bad. Like I'm not. Am I suicidal? I'm not. I don't think I'm suicidal. I don't want to take my life, right? So it made me put things in perspective. So bless his soul, man. But dealing with that made me look at things totally differently. Okay. I finished school. That's that for the rest of the year. The guys make it to the SEC championship. I'm happy for them. And then, according to my agent and a couple people, I was still pretty pretty high on the draft boards, right? If you think about it in retrospect, I go through a season, I don't get hurt. I'm still the same player. So potentially, a team could be willing to take a chance on me late first round or second round. So we get some interest from Nike, and I become a Nike athlete. I leave school in January, leave South Carolina behind, and I'm out of here, and I'm off to Dallas, Texas to train at the Michael Johnson Performance Facility that's sponsored by Nike and former Olympic gold medalist Michael Johnson. So, we had a great time down there in Dallas, and, that's where I was going to start my training, and it's time to move on to the next step of the NFL. I was there for a week, and I was training with Michael Irvin from the Cowboys, showing me a few moves and how to, do some things on the field. And I wanted to stay extra and do some extra work because now all of a sudden, Nick,
he's a trip.
He's a trip.
I ran into him in a nightclub in Dallas one time.
That's how all great stories start. I met Michael Irvin in a nightclub.
They're bringing me and my best friend through the kitchen, and they want to take us basically a VIP entrance to the other side. And he's walking past the other direction with a different, bouncer and security guard. And he's like, yo, bro. I love that shirt, bro.
That sounds about right.
5 minute hugging. It's like, he's like 55 in the nightclub in Dallas.
Mike still gets to that. Look, he's a legend. I heard about those stories in Dallas, man. You can't walk around Dallas without hearing about those Michael Irvin stories.
He was fun. We ended up hanging out with him later. He's fun.
Yeah, good guy, man. Good guy. He was showing me some things, and like I said, now after missing a season, it's a little more pressure on me to perform at the NFL Combine. Now I've got to.
You got to prove something.
I've got to overshow how good of an athlete I am.
It's not like, hey, he just had a bad day. Look what he did last week. This is like,
he missed a year of football.
Maybe
People
he can't
say
do anymore.
There you go. Does he even know how to play football anymore? Right? It's like that all of a sudden becomes an issue. So I put a lot of stress on myself, a lot of pressure to perform, and unfortunately, I ended up breaking my foot, man. Broke my foot a week into training down there in Dallas, and a month away from the combine where I'm supposed to show my athletic prowess, and now I have this broken bone in my foot. So dealing with that put me really in a dark place, but I still had to go to the combine. I still had to do stuff, so I didn't tell anyone. I went to the NFL combine that February and didn't tell anybody about my broken foot. Thought I could skip past, maybe if I could take enough ibuprofen, I'd be all right and still do well. But unfortunately, I had to take some X-rays. Some teams, asked for some X-rays, and so by day 2 of the NFL Combine, guys are asking, some teams are asking, hey, you got a broken bone in your foot here. We saw your X-ray. I'm like, really? What? Who would have thunk it? But
how bad did it hurt?
It was excruciating.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it was excruciating. I thought I was going to be able to run the 40-yard dash, but I couldn't even walk on it. I did the vertical leap, broad jump, bench press, and then after that, it just gave out. And my agent didn't want to go the route of like shooting anything in it or doing anything on that end. So the ibuprofen didn't work. So long story short, I wasn't able to perform, and you could hear a pin drop in Lucas Oil Stadium when they announced over the loudspeaker that, Weslye Saunders would be not participating in the rest of this combine, due to injury. And you can just look up in the crowd and see all the coaches in there doing, pretty much marking an X, like, you just missed a year of school and now you're hurt. Like, the hurt might be worse than the suspension, right? Now you're injury prone, right? My first injury ever, really. And so that was a lot to deal with, man. So, now you wonder, people put the pieces together about how a guy like me could go undrafted. Well, a perfect storm can happen and put you in a place where you're crawling out of a space. You don't even know how you got there that quickly. And so all of a sudden, within a year, I'll go from the number 1 tight end to I'm not even on people's boards anymore. And so that was very humbling for me. And to leave that combine knowing that, I didn't do anything really to help my case, right? Now I went there with all these high hopes. And it brought me right back down to reality, like, will I even make it to the NFL? And shortly after that, they have the draft. I don't get drafted. I still expected to go maybe 3rd or 4th round, maybe 5th. One of my best friends, Colton Palmer, his parents, lovely people down in Durham, North Carolina, they threw a draft party for me, and we invited all these people and friends because surely I'd be going by day 2 or day 3. And day 2 comes, day 3 comes, my name is not called. Guys who I know I'm better than are selected, and that was the start of the undrafted. And it was a feeling I can't describe to anyone, thinking, having all of your dreams right here within your grasp, and then it just kind of falls by the wayside. And so, it woke me up.
I couldn't imagine being surrounded by other people and having to be like, thanks for coming. Like, I'm so glad you were like, what's the awkward energy and awkward conversations in the, thank you for supporting me. Like, what's the?
It's so awkward, right? Because everybody else is trying not to be awkward around you, right? Everybody's like, oh,
they're trying to make sure that you know that they don't notice.
Right? Yeah. Oh, it's going okay. Well, man, they don't know what they're missing out on.
I didn't watch the last round.
Right? Yeah, we didn't watch. So, but also we got the phone. You got to have your phone line open because you're waiting on a call from a team. So we got the phone sitting on a table by itself. So everybody just we're trying to have a good time. We're looking at the phone and it doesn't happen. And it's pretty. My parents were there. Everybody's there. You're the hometown hero, and it doesn't happen. And of course, one of my other friends who was involved in the suspension with me, Greg Little from Durham, North Carolina. He went second round. So, we're from the same city. And so, we actually go through the same situation with the suspension. And he kills it at the combine, and he goes second round. So now, my arch nemesis in the city, he went second round, and here I am going undrafted. It was even more embarrassing. But like I said, God, he makes no mistakes. And so that's exactly what I needed to go through at that time. It humbled me. Shortly after that, segue is the NFL lockout, right? So the draft happens, and 2 days later, all NFL operations are halted.
Someone don't want you playing football.
Or they do, because you got to remember, I'm dealing with a broken foot, Nick. So I need, I can't do anything anyway, so I have to get surgery on the foot. And this NFL lockout lasts about 90 days. The exact amount of time it takes for my foot to heal up. It's about a 90-day recovery time after you get this screw. I got a 5-inch screw put in my foot. And because, possibly we'll be ready for training camp.
That's more than just a break. That's a serious injury.
That's a serious injury. It's a pretty serious injury, right? And
you're biomechanical now.
Biomechanical. There you go. That's a good way of looking at it, man. And so you got this foreign object in your foot now, and you're trying to train and get back in shape for maybe the NFL to come back, because you don't really know if talks. There could be no season technically if talks aren't gotten together. So long story short, we get a call from the Steelers and the Ravens right before training camp opens back up, because we hear that negotiations are coming back, and my agent, commits to me going up to Pittsburgh, because I also have to try out for the team now, right? As an undrafted free agent, you making the team, you got to earn your spot, and no guaranteed money there. So if you go first or second round, they have to keep you, right? It doesn't matter how terrible you are. I know some terrible first and second round guys. And so you're there just by default, and they have to play you. They got so much money put in you that they have to. On the opposite end, as an undrafted guy, now it's like you have to do something extraordinary for me to even want to keep you around. Why should I want to keep you, And so it turned into that, and the lockout ended, man, and we had about 14 days of training camp. Now everything's condensed. We, no football. There's been no rookie mini camp. There's no nothing. And they just throw you out there right at the end of July and say, okay, guys, football is back, but you got 13 days to make the team. Good luck. And, luckily I went out there, man, had some great.
How many tight ends were you competing against?
About 7 or 8. Yeah, it was a big room of tight ends.
You were coming in at number 8.
I'm number 8. Yeah, I'm number 8. I saw guys get cut the first day. Before we even hit the field, they were cutting guys and shuffling them out the building. I'm like, so you do this action. Like, oh my God. You see guys start to panic. And that's when I get to talk about having a meditate.
Just like, hey, we didn't like the way you looked.
We didn't like the way you looked. Was his jersey too big? Like, now you're trying to figure out what were they looking at to cut this guy? It doesn't make sense. So now I'm like, oh shit, it was intense, man. And I had a great talk with my grandma, because my grandmother, rest her soul at the time, Jaretha Rhines. I was able to talk to her, and her being was so peaceful, because I was panicking. Like, Grandma, my foot is hurt. I haven't actually gone full speed in the whole past 3 months. I've just spent on recovering and healing my foot, so I haven't actually run full speed and a lot of So
that's scary.
It's scary. Now I got to go out there and cut. What if I got to cut to the left? Now I got to cut off this foot that's hurt. And I had all these, I was very anxious, and she just kind of calmed me down. Said, "Hey, there's nothing else you can do about it. The Lord is taking care of you. He's gotten you to this point. Now just go out there and do what you do. If you're scared about, making a mistake, then you've already lost the battle." And so I was like, Grandma, all right, cool. If I go out there and this thing breaks again, and it was meant to be, but if not, I can't go out there scared of that. Right. And so that was the best advice she gave me. And I went out and, I actually almost got cut after the first game. I will say, I was very rusty. It was over a year since I had played football, man. And, Bruce Arians took us over there. We went to Washington, and I stunk it up. It was like, it was bad, man. And so, I was like, oh, this, it was fun while it lasted. I could tell people I made it to one preseason game in training camp. But luckily, I think they gave me the benefit of the doubt. I came back, the next couple games and progressively got better, which is what they're looking for in the preseason. And, we played 4 games within 14 days. And, I got better at each one of them.
Oh, no shit.
Yeah, and I scored a touchdown in the last game. And so, we scored a touchdown to put your name on the map, and we
good
won
timing
the game.
in the last game.
Very good timing. We were back in my home state of North Carolina in Charlotte playing the Panthers, so my family was there, and I showed out. I did what I was supposed to do, but, of course, nothing's a done deal. So you got to go back to Pittsburgh. You got to wait a couple of days to hear who made the 53-man roster, right? Because, of course, they're going to keep Troy Polamalu. Brent Roethlisberger's on the team, right? Hines Ward, all these big names. So you keep looking down the roster. There's not that much space. 80. It goes from 85 guys to 53. And so
it's 30 guys fighting for 3 spots.
Basically, and you got and that last day on cut day, 4 p.m. is the cutoff time for cuts. And so you think you had a great preseason, and once again, I'm with my agent, I'm with my people, we're watching the phone. And if you don't get a call, that's the best thing for you. You don't want your phone to ring because otherwise they're calling you to bring in your playbook. It's over for you. Thank you for your time. And long story short, I'm in Pittsburgh hanging out. I actually fell asleep. And, because I was so anxious, I just cut off all the lights in the hotel and went to sleep. Like, all right, man, it's going to be over. I wake up, phone's blowing up. I had, 100 missed calls, and I'm thinking, people are calling to tell me, great job, but, sorry. And I see that, I had made the 53-man roster. It was a big sigh of relief knowing that I, crossed that hurdle. But, the journey had just begun at that point, Nick.
Well, first of all, congratulations. You made it.
Yeah.
You're one of the 1%, whatever the data set is, of people that started playing Pop Warner or Little League football that make it all the way and get to say, hey, I made a professional football team.
Yeah.
And you're one of those 1%.
Thank you. Yeah.
And so you're the Steelers. Who's coaching?
Pittsburgh Steelers. The man himself, Mike Tomlin.
Arians.
Bruce Arians on the offensive side. Yeah. The great Dick LeBeau on defense. These guys, we got all these Super Bowl winners in the locker room. Brett Kiesel and James Ferrier. Just some great guys. Obviously Troy Polamalu, who's one of the nicest guys I've ever met in my life. And so going in the locker room with these older guys who want to see you succeed, but they're also hard on you and they know how to compete. It was the best thing that ever happened to me.
What were some of the lessons that you're going to take from some of that peer group or from the head coaches?
The peer group, man, just learning how to be a team and learning how to play together, right? Oftentimes when you play sometimes with your brother, you might take it a little easier on him, but they knew how to, what we call iron sharpening iron, right? We knew how to practice together. These guys have been in the Super Bowl a couple years prior.
Yep.
Actually, the year prior I got there, they were in the Super Bowl. So. And they had won it a few years ago. So they knew how to win. They knew how to play under pressure. And that aspect of things really sunk into me. So within, I didn't start off great during the season, but within 3 or 4 games, I was getting into the groove of things. I knew how to practice. I knew how to take care of my body. I'm getting in the cold tub now. I've never been a cold tub kind of guy. But your body starts to, you need something. You got to have something to recover. And so, I'm starting to learn how to take care of my body and do certain things, watch extra film. Right now it's a cerebral game because Bruce Arians had a very tough offense. And so I'm like, oh, man, you got to learn this offense. You can learn his offense. You can learn any offense. Right. So I guess being a student of the game is what I learned from these older guys, and what Coach Tomlin would tell us all the time on film. He was like, hey, don't watch Troy. Troy was one of the laziest practice players you would ever see, right? But they don't. Obviously, he's proven himself on the field, so he doesn't. His practice habits
he
might not
flip the switch.
Yeah, he knew how to flip the switch. Everybody can't flip that switch, and so that was something I also had to learn. Okay, find your groove, find your rhythm.
So take me to the final kind of moments of the NFL for you. You're there for a couple of years.
Yeah.
You have some injuries. You run into some challenges with those injuries and how to counteract that. Walk us through what happens. Take us to the fire.
Well, the fire had started during this whole conversation. So even I guess there's 2 storylines going on at the same time, right? Me trying to make this team as a rookie, as an undrafted free agent, but also me battling injury and pain. So I'm on Vicodin, I'm on hydrocodone, I'm on painkillers that they have been prescribing me from my doctor. And I don't know if you know, that's not the great remedy for going out and performing on the field, right? It kind of makes you drowsy, makes you, not as explosive. So, I'm dealing with that. And I actually had a friend of mine who suggested Adderall. And I will say this, I took an Adderall before a game, man, and got prescribed from my doctor, but didn't know I had to go through the NFL to get it prescribed, which is a whole different subject. But I will tell you, man, it helped me immensely. And, I was able to do some things from a focus standpoint. Clarity, man. It was like, my brain was foggy and cloudy. So, I saw what other side there was. Now, I'd only taken it twice. I only took 2 Adderall. And one of those came right before a drug test. And so I played the whole season, my rookie year, have a great year. We're going into the playoffs. I'm actually doing pretty well. I started 13 games, so I'm starting to get,
Wow.
Yeah, I scored a touchdown. Amazing. Scored a touchdown on Sunday Night Football. Ben is starting to look at me a little bit more. And things are on the up and up, and we're heading to the playoffs. And we got this great game plan where BA is going to get me the ball more, and we get a letter to the facility saying, Weslye Saunders failed a drug test back in training camp back in August when I just got started, and I'm under threat of a 4-game suspension now. And it was like, what? Like 4, so you go through the whole year and you think you're doing a great thing, and they tell you, hey, you failed a drug test back then. We weren't going to say anything, but we're saying something now. So yeah, here we are, and it's 4-game mandatory, right? They got something called zero tolerance, and so there was really no appealing we could do. They didn't care about my circumstances. They didn't care about the Vicodin, and they didn't care about any of that other stuff. You took this substance. We didn't approve it. Now you got to pay. And the coaches had a decision to make, and instead of taking my 4-game suspension then, which would have possibly carried into the playoffs, right? And if we make it to the Super Bowl, I missed the whole playoffs. So we were able to defer the suspension till the next year because we thought we were going to the Super Bowl again, and we ended up losing in the first round to Tim Tebow up in Denver.
Yeah.
which was not expected at all. That was another life lesson. Don't look too far ahead down the road because you got to take care of business right here.
What was that? What was the Miracle? What was the play called?
Miracle in Mile High. Yeah, we went to overtime, man, and we're thinking about New England the next week and Tom Brady and all of this stuff, and we forget about Tebow. And one of my good friends who has his own podcast is doing great. The Pivot, Ryan Clark.
Yeah.
Ryan. He who suffers from sickle cell and wasn't able to play that game, and as a safety, he's the general, back end general, right? And so I think. If he's playing that last play to Demaryius Thomas, rest his soul, I don't think that happens. But, certain things happen, and, we were blindsided, and boom, our, playoff dreams are ended right there in Denver. And which is unfortunate to me because now,
you're in the suspension mode.
Right. Now season's over, and I'm going into the off season. I can't even have a great time because now I'm thinking about this upcoming 4-game suspension that I have to serve for the next 4 games of next year. And,
So in that next season, is that when you move on to Indiana, or is it 2 seasons?
Yeah, that's that next season. That next season coming up, Bruce Arians gets a job in Indianapolis, so he's no longer our offensive coordinator in Pittsburgh, and they bring in a guy by the name of Todd Haley. For whatever reason, I don't think I was Todd Haley's favorite cup of tea. And, you start to understand it's not about
But you're my favorite cup of tea.
Hey, thank you, man. I appreciate it.
Drinking West Juice in the cup.
Yes, West Juice tea, baby.
His product.
Yeah, but speaking of tea, man, it wasn't his favorite cup of tea, and you start to learn the corporate side of the business where, if a guy comes in, he usually wants to bring his own guys. And so he's bringing his own people in, and It's not about how well you perform if there's favoritism. And, I had a great preseason again with Pittsburgh, and actually a dominant preseason. I scored again and, did some things where I thought for sure, even the announcers on my last game said, well, that's why Weslye Saunders is going to be a part of this team because he has that kind of talent and he's going to survive the 4-game suspension because during the 4 games, you got to bring in somebody else to take in my spot and all this stuff. So, I served my 4-game suspension. 4 games comes up. I'm coming back to the team, man. Felt like the longest 4 games of my life, but I'm coming back and it's wonderful. I came back they played Thursday night. I come back on a Friday, and they had a roster exemption, so that means they would have to cut somebody to bring me back. So everybody in the building is trying to figure out who they're going to cut before they bring Wes back, and they came and brought me in, and Wes was who they cut. And, it was a beautiful Friday afternoon. I remember Coach Tomlin sat me down, and I hadn't even gotten my seat good yet. And Coach said, well, Wes, we're going to let you go. And I just remember just looking at him, and it was almost like it didn't feel like he actually said that. I was like, what? Yeah, we're going to let you go. Appreciate everything you've done, blah, blah, blah. And, he gave me the exit speech. And before I knew it, I was walking out of the office, walking out of the stadium with my bags, on the way home, it was like, I just got cut. Like, you know, it almost like it couldn't happen. You know, my good friend Antonio Brown at the time, we were all they thought I was joking. I came out of Coach Tomlin's office, and Mike Wallace and the boys like, hey, Wes, what's up, baby? And I had this dead look on my face, and everybody's face kind of straightened up. I'm like, yeah, I'm out of here, fellas. And it was definitely unbelievable. You know, articles came out like, you know, this makes no sense, because obviously they actually could have cut me before the suspension.
Right.
So it made no sense to keep me around that long, and then, you know, cut me then. So
when you look at those, I heard like 3 major issues that you went through in 3 years.
Yeah.
Being pulled from your senior year.
Mm-hmm.
Having to bounce out of the tryout.
Yep.
And then being cut in that moment.
Yep.
Which one is the harder of the 3?
Oh man, they all brought their own their own flavor. They were flavor of the month at one point, man. I would probably say the hardest might have been collegiately, you know, getting suspended in college because you don't know what's next, right? I haven't made it to the NFL.
Right.
Nobody's seen me at that level. So now me getting there, I have to cross another barrier. And so, you know, at least once you're in the league and you get cut or you know something happens, you already got film.
Yep.
People know about you.
Yep.
Your agent's already done his job. So, you know, chances
you just
are,
had a great preseason.
I had a great preseason, yeah. So it's like, you know, it's not pure panic mode, but that collegiate aspect where you're like, hey, I haven't even gotten to where I want to go yet. Will I get there? That was probably the most stressful, and that was the moment where I realized I had to have the most faith. You know, my faith grew immensely during these times because, you know, I turned into a recluse. I was all on my own, man. I didn't want to talk to anyone. I was literally depressed, obviously, you know, and dealing with an injury. A lot of people don't talk about athletes dealing with injury as a form of trauma, right? So now your body's traumatized, but your mind is trying to get back from the injury immediately. That's not what your body's meant to do. Your body's got to, you know, healing takes it's a process, and so you got to respect that process. And if you don't, you'll end up hurting yourself more, right? You see guys all the time.
So how does your career come to an end over those next 1 to 2 years after Indy?
After Indy, Bruce Arians leaves and goes to Arizona. Yeah, and Pep Hamilton comes in from Stanford, Andrew Luck's guy, and then once again, you know, you realize that it's all about who you know. And so I ended up getting another suspension, 8 game after that, partying in the off season. I thought I had made it out of the fire. You know, feeling good about myself. I come down to Miami. I'm having a great time. I've got another year under my belt, more money, and I'm having a great time, and I'm partying with everyone, and the party's on me. And at the time, Molly was a big deal. You know, people were, you know, taking all kind of recreational drugs, and Molly was the big thing, and we were, you know, partaking in that. And guess who has a drug test right after he comes back from Miami partying and test positive for a performance-enhancing drug, which was Molly.
MDMA, the performance enhancer.
The performance enhancer. Once again.
I mean, it can enhance some performance, but I don't know.
Right. So, you know.
I don't know what's going to enhance a football field.
There you go. So, you know, once again, I'm in the news and the media looking like an idiot for getting, 4-game suspension. Okay, he was a kid. Now you get suspended for the 2nd straight year with another team for 8 games, right? And so that aspect of things was like, okay, now it's really over. Now I'm probably out of the league, which doesn't happen to my surprise. I served my 8-game suspension, and the Colts end up bringing me back, and I finished the season with them, and I'm like, okay, I'm back in the league now, and getting ready for the next season after we get bounced out of the playoffs. And, you know, I guess what people don't talk about often is the inglorious exit from Spaces, right? There was no big send-off. There was nothing to tell me that my time was coming to an end. Like, everything was on the up and up. It was looking like, you know, I had an opportunity to really do some things. And but at the end of the next preseason, the Colts cut me, and I had a great preseason there. And my dad, you know, would always tell me growing up about Wally Pipp, right, and Lou Gehrig, and, you know, don't get Wally pipped out here. So I always knew this story. But, you know, it happened to me. I say, you know, kids, don't get Weslye Saunders, right? If that makes any sense. But, I had one of my good friends, Jack Doyle, Indiana guy. They brought, you know, during my 8-game suspension, they brought him in to Indy because you got to have somebody to fill my place. Yeah. And they bring him in. He's a nice, hard-working guy. And when I get back, we're all in the room together. And that next year, they ended up keeping Jack and let me go, right? And so, you know, once you open the door for things like that, you know, unfortunate things can happen. I don't have anything against Jack. It's all part of the business. Yeah. But these are the things that, you know, I had to go through. Even though you might be physically, you know, athletically better than a guy, that's not how it always works. This is a business, this is a corporation, and I realize that these owners like the aesthetics of things. So if you're going to cause any kind of trouble or any kind of negative light on the organization, your days are numbered, unless you're that guy. And even sometimes those guys get let go, right? Yeah. And so, Coach Tomlin used to tell us a great quote: "Be who you can afford to be." Right. And so sometimes you can mess up and they'll keep you. Tom Brady, they forget about Deflategate, and sometimes some things get swept under the rug, but everybody isn't so lucky.
Yeah. Well, man, that's a hell of a story.
Yeah.
That's all within 4 years?
Within 3 years actually. So 2010, 2011, 2012. Yeah.
And then last season 2013. So 3.5, 4 years.
Yep.
Okay. Holy shit. So you just gave like an entire career, it sounds like, in about a 3.5 year run of all these little ups and downs, but all of it inside of what I would consider to be still the fire. You had like this little heartbeat.
I never got out of the fire.
You never got out of it.
Right. I thought I was out.
You had these little like tremors, but then it came back down. So during that 3 to 4 years, so I want to walk everyone back through this. You're the best in the country.
Yes.
All of a sudden, you're dealing with NCAA, and you start to get a little heartbeat, and all of a sudden, you break your foot. Start to get a little heartbeat, and all of a sudden, Adderall, start to get heartbeat, all of a sudden,
cut.
You go to Miami. Miami got you. When it's time to move on and this is that chapter for you is done, what are all of the thoughts, feelings? What's the lowest point during this journey? Take us through what people that are watching us go through, and their failures in business, and their failures in their marriages, and their failures as a parent while they were trying to run a company. What were you feeling, and what's the depths of it?
That's a good question, man. It's sometimes we got to get out of our own way. Obviously through these stories I talk about, I never put the blame on anyone, right? I had a bad case of self-sabotage for a while, right? I knew better. I could have done better, but I let certain instances take me out of my character. And me really understanding myself was a pretty important aspect of things, because I was, one of my favorite quotes is I tell people, once you've ruined your reputation, you can live quite freely. And so me going through all of these instances and being publicly humiliated and going through the public embarrassment of things actually helped me along the way to understand who I really am, to bring me to a more spiritual place. Like, hey, there's a power that's higher than these clowns who get on Twitter.
What else can they take, right? So you think about that journey. Took money.
Yeah. Reputation.
Took health.
Yeah, took health.
Loss of reputation, loss of identity as an athlete,
and money. Yeah, like I want you to emphasize that money.
Money.
$350,000 in fines. So that 4 game plus the 8 game amounted to almost $400,000.
Your signing bonus that you would have had if you would have been first rounder. Like when you start to put all of these into light, a lot of people lose one of them. I lost my health. I'm in the fire. I came out. I lost my money. I'm overcoming it. I lost my brand was shot. I overcame it. You dealt with 3 or 4 of those all at the exact same time over the course of a couple of years. And, talk about forging of someone's spirits, forging of just what they can handle, a bulletproof exterior. Like if you make it out of that, you can take on anything.
Yep.
And you made it out.
Yeah. Yeah. That's a great way of putting it. But, to answer your question about like on the way out, a lot of us are stubborn sometimes, so you don't want to tell yourself that it's over. And so I knew physically I could still play. I still, I did everything under the sun to try to get back in the good graces of the NFL. But, it's definitely a tight club to break into once you're on the outside looking in. And I had to learn that the hard way. I poured out all kind of gimmicks and branding, marketing to try to get Why Not West started, trying to get me back on the field. I played in a couple of secondary leagues, the American Alliance of Football in 2019, which was pretty good till they ran out of money, 8 games into the season. So I had other opportunities, but, once you realize you're running into a brick wall, then it's time to, kind of pivot a little bit. But during this whole time, I started learning about healthy ways of taking care of my body. I started learning about gut health. I went vegan for 1 year and lost 42 pounds. At one point, I was up to 305 pounds due to stress and, overeating and things like that. So, it was a blessing in disguise, man, because, you'd be surprised how many professional athletes have no clue about mental health and how it relates to their physical health, right? Mm-hmm. And so it was one of those aspects of things where, it brought me to exactly where I needed to be. And I was able to, teach about things I'd been through. And you'd be surprised how many kids, my message, I started going around speaking to children in elementary schools and middle schools, because you'd be surprised how many kids want to hear about the bad stuff, right? Everybody can't be Tim Tebow and, do things perfectly through life. They want to hear about, hey, you were down there in the fire. Yeah. How did you get out? Because you'd be surprised how many, 9 and 10-year-olds feel like that now. It's super real.
It's more real. And when you look at the salad of shit that you went through, which one of those was the hardest to overcome for you? Was it reputation? Was it the loss of money? Was it loss of identity as an athlete? Which one was like this one right here, Nick? That was the hardest one.
Probably the reputation. I believe a lot of people make decisions based on what others think of them, and it can cripple us sometimes, especially when it comes from your family, right? I know a lot of people who are pigeonholed by what their mom might think about this decision, or father. With me, and that all went out of the window because, now my parents are having to explain to other people who know I'm in the NFL, like, what's wrong with your son, right? So it was like secondary embarrassment. Like, I'm embarrassed because I embarrassed my parents. I'm embarrassed because I embarrassed my friends. So that level of accountability takes you to another level that a lot of people aren't willing to go. Like, yeah, this was all my fault. This was all my doing, but watch me bring it back now. And, that was...
so it inspired... So watching the ripple effect of some of your decisions throughout parents, friends, etc., inspired you to take ownership, responsibility, and make drastic change.
There you go. It's only two ways to go, man, right? You can double down and say, hey, it was everybody else's fault, right? Y'all did this, right? You could have told me more times not to do this, but that doesn't get you anywhere. And I've seen that story happen plenty of times. I didn't want to be that washed up athlete that's blaming everybody else for his downfall, right? And plus, I was still young. I'm like, man, I can change this story right now. I can do whatever I want. And so this idea of taking drastic action, right? Me learning about people like Tony Robbins and Sadhguru, but these different elements of self-care where you can be aggressive sometimes, but you can be vulnerable sometimes. It's okay to be hurt. It's okay to be, it's okay to surrender, right? This alpha male mentality I had to get out of, because that's where we're at in NFL. A lot of people look at that as the ultra masculine sport, and a lot of the ways we deal with issues and trauma is in that mindset too, which is not that healthy, so.
Well, it's not that healthy mentally, emotionally, or physically.
None of the above.
Turns out it's not really smart to bang your head against another person's head at 30 miles per hour over and over and over again.
Really? You don't say.
It's just new breaking news. So we're gonna take this home. Tell us what you're up to now, what you've been up to, this recreation, this Phoenix Rising, this elevation. Give us the last 7 years, like where you're at today. It's really cool.
Yeah, thank you, man. Well, I had 2 kids, my beautiful son, Sebastian, and my wonderful daughter, Cameron.
Congratulations.
Thank you. I love them very much. And so they brought a lot of things into perspective for me, right? Who am I doing this for? What do I want them to remember me as, right? Because they could just get on Google and see what everybody said about dad, or I could present to them someone else. And so, my children, they're a very big part of my life, but also learning about this holistic way of taking care of our bodies. So I started West Juice, all natural juice company. We started as a cold pressed drink, and then we migrated to a powder with 14 superfood ingredients. Shout out to my co-founder, Dr. Charlie Ware in Hollywood, Florida, who's an expert on epigenetics and all things health. And so, this thing of getting people around me healthy body, healthy mind, because a lot of people don't understand that those things correlate. And so I took that into consideration, especially when it comes to the kids, because I was a very unhealthy kid. I had acne and all growing up, didn't realize the effect of sugar that was having on me, things of that nature. So, I guess the biggest thing I took away from it is that I got to serve. My duty is to serve. What's the use of going through all that pain and going through the fire if you're not going to serve others to make sure that they don't follow down the same route? Because you'd be surprised how relatable football is to everything, or sports in general, right? Having to go out and prepare a game plan and knowing your opponent, right? A lot of people don't even know who their opponent is because some people haven't been in the sports realm. So really sharing my message and being a beacon of light has been my purpose. And I started working with Paulette Pfeiffer, a lovely woman here in South Florida, who runs a foundation by the name of Silent Victims of Crime. I've been working with them full-time since about 5 years now, where we work with the children of incarcerated people. And, that we try to stop that school to prison pipeline. And it's very effective, and it's affected me greatly over the past years, seeing these kids grow up and not go down the same route that maybe their parents have gone down, or to other people in their environment. Because once you
was the group we got a chance to spend with a year ago.
Yes, sir, with Little Lighthouse. Yep. So shout out to Little Lighthouse too, and the great work you're doing in the community as well, man. Because it's all hands on deck. It takes a village, man. And these kids, it's not getting any easier for these kids on social media. With everything they're being shown and what's being driven down their throats. So we really got to provide a positive light for them to see, and to see people, hey, there have been mistakes that I've made, but this is how I came back from it, right? Not everything is perfect like you see it on Instagram. Everybody makes their life look so perfect on IG, and I like to own my mistakes as part of the testimony, right? You can't. I want to hear about, like you said, in business.
Amen.
You lost it. How'd you get it back?
Amen. Yeah. So two top tips. Any direction you want to go, straight to camera. There's solopreneurs, there's entrepreneurs, there's sales professionals. 2 top tips for them to fight through the fire and become great again. Hit them.
Okay, top tips.
Anything.
Okay, hey, if you're building anything, man, do it with joy. Do it with love. What the spirit that you put inside of it is probably what you're going to get out. And one of my favorite Bible quotes, Matthew 18:3, is that truly, I tell you, children, you will never enter the kingdom of heaven if you do not return and become like little children. And so the concept of that, we need to think more childlike. We need to start looking at things from a fresh scope and not be deterred by having a bad day, making that a bad week and things like that. And I guess my second tip would be nothing in life is ever good or bad, but thinking makes it so. Shakespeare said that once, and, your perspective on life can affect everything. And far too often, we've almost been conditioned to look at things from a negative light, we even talk to ourselves negatively. They say over 80% of our self-talk is negative. And so I want to tell people to start breathing and really living in the essence of positivity, even if you got to fake it till you make it, because it makes a difference, right? I guess what they say, when you smile, your brain doesn't know if you're actually happy or if you're faking it. So, hey, go for it.
Agreed. And where can they find you? Where can everybody find you?
You can
West Juice.
Yeah,
where
man.
Can find the West Juice?
You can find the West Juice. That's WESJOOSE. So once you Google it, nobody spells juice like that. So that's why we went that route. But you can check me out on my website, weslye.com, WESLYE. Again, another name that's not spelled like that anywhere else. So, we like to keep it pretty unique on this side. And of course, on Instagram and Twitter, Wes_Saunders88.
Beautiful, guys. Episode 23, Weslye Saunders, Forged by Fire. We had a beautiful story it felt like a lifetime of fire in a 4-year run of a shit salad of stuff this man went through. He overcame, he's rebranded, he's recreated. He's got businesses, he's a speaker, he's got children, and he's amazingly a beautiful human with a big heart. So I appreciate you. I'm grateful for you for being here. In episode 23, we're out.